Welcome back, everybody. It is inspired by the artwork of Gerard Sekoto and explores the milestone Witwatersrand miner strike of 1946, imagining the struggles of black miners and their loved ones as thousands of miners bravely embarked on strike action for better wages. That's the South African premiere of Mthuthuzeli November's Olivier award-winning INGOMA, which will be staged by Cape Town City Ballet as part of its autumn season from 19th of May at Artscape. To tell us more, we're joined by Debbie Turner, who is the CEO of Cape Town City Ballet. Debbie, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, Debbie. Give us more background into what Mthuthuzeli November's Olivier award-winning INGOMA is about and what the inspiration is behind it.
Mthuthuzeli November is a South African choreographer, and he lives in London and has been working there for some time. He was commissioned by his director of a company called Ballet Black in London to create a work that was quintessentially South African and that was a South African story. And he discovered the work of Gerard Sekoto. Obviously, he's a young man still. He's 27 years of age, so he is. South African history is something that he is exploring, has explored for many years in his student years. And he chose the work actually initially of the Song of the Pick, and then discovered the Blue Head series by Gerard Sekoto. And from that artwork, he then researched the history behind it, the inspiration behind the art, and then commissioned a piece of music to be written about what his response to the artwork was. And that was, it was written by Peter Johnson.
And why is November's story still relevant today, given the fact that it explores the milestone Witwatersrand miner strike in 1946?
Well, in my many discussions with Mthuthuzeli, he very specifically discussed with me and spoke about the suffering and the plight of women who, with the migrant labor, were always the ones left behind, and the terrible suffering they had with their families being broken up and separated. And Mthuthuzeli himself comes from a single-parent family, and I think he was very inspired by realizing what his mother had done as a single parent, and how much she had encouraged him and his brother actually to explore dance and to let him follow his dreams. And as he unpacked more and more and more about the story behind this artwork, he was inspired to create the ballet. And it premiered in 2019 in London.
And why do you think it's so important celebrating Mthuthuzeli November's legacy in his own home country?
Well, goodness me. I mean, it seems to be a thing in South Africa that South African artists only become really, really valued in their own country once they've made it internationally. And very often the work happens outside of South Africa, funded by European money or American money, and so often you don't get to see South Africa's artists' work in our country. So when I knew this ballet was in formulation, because he actually workshopped it here in South Africa, and I just said, when you're ready, I want to bring it home.
Sure.
And I want his work and other choreographers' work, artists' work, South African musicians' work to be celebrated in its own country, seen by its own people, and the value of South African art, being valued in its own country, which us artists at the moment feel like that's not really the case.
Okay, now let's talk about Moon Behind the Clouds and Serenade. What are these two productions all about?
So Serenade is actually a Russian-American choreography from some years ago that was staged earlier in the year in Artscape. And because we were only able to perform to 100 people, we are doing a repeat run of that season. The ballet that sits side by side with that Moon Behind the Clouds is a suite of works by 5 South African choreographers and linked together by a narrator, Marcel Meyer. and it is linked together through the words of Max Ehrmann, the Desiderata. And as I said, 5 different South African choreographers that created the work during the time of COVID. So it was, another layer of challenge on top of what would normally be the challenges in a dance studio. But a very cathartic experience for the dancers and for the choreographers, given that, after the very intense lockdown, they were able to get back into the studios, and even though they were behind masks and having to keep their distance, they were able to create beautiful work.
Yeah, and having said that, how has this coronavirus pandemic forced you to find creative ways to keep the doors open? What is it that you did creatively and differently than in the past?
Well, one of the most it seems simple, but it's an operational thing where the studios get cleaned after every rehearsal, dancers working a distance from one another, which is what initially had to happen, is so sort of counterintuitive to what dance is, because we work in very close proximity to each other. It's a very tactile art form where there's lots of touching and a close proximity that brings the movement to life by interaction with your fellow artist. So that was a huge challenge for the dancers and for the staff.
Okay.
But at the same time, what came out of it was something quite extraordinary.
Okay. And what else is in store for the opening of your autumn season at Artscape?
Well, when we open on the 19th, the ballet Les Sylphides, which is a more than 100 years old traditional classical ballet piece that stands in wonderful juxtaposition to INGOMA as a double bill of works. The program is not on the short side, but it's as long as it's able to be in this COVID time, because we're not allowed to have an interval. We are only allowed 250 people in our auditorium, which is obviously a huge challenge for performing arts companies that are used to performing for over 1,000 people. But we have to observe, the regulations and the laws of South Africa and protect each other. But whatever we can do to get live art on the stage is what Cape Town City Ballet has chosen to do, and it's a wonderful to be able to be generous with our public and do so.
All right, Debbie, thank you so much for your time. Great chatting to you.
Thank you.
All right, that was Debbie Turner, the CEO of Cape Town City Ballet, speaking to us about the South African premiere of Mthuthuzeli. November's Olivier award-winning INGOMA is part of its autumn season from the 19th of May at the Artscape. This is Morning Live. It is 4 minutes.